What happens when a president stops his entire convoy for a crying widow by the road? In a world where power often ignores pain, Burkina Faso's President Ibrahy Trari did the unthinkable. He noticed, he listened, and what he uncovered next would shake the entire system of government to its core. This is not just a story. It's a revolution in disguise, a story of corruption exposed, a widow's dignity restored, and a leader who proves that real leadership begins where empathy starts. In this emotional, true story of an undercover boss meets social justice hero, you'll witness how one mother's tears stopped a president in his tracks, the shocking truth about stolen government aid, and the sweeping reform that followed, all because of one act of compassion. Watch until the end to see how one quiet woman inspired a nation and changed everything. The sun was slipping behind the horizon, casting gold and amber streaks across the dry sky of Burkina Faso. A long convoy of black vehicles kicked up dust as it moved steadily along a village road outside the capital. Children waved. Elders stood at attention. Most thought it was just another presidential drive-by, distant, symbolic, untouchable. But something unusual happened that day. Inside the middle car, President Ibrahy Trari stared out the window. His eyes narrowed. His hand slowly rose. "Stop the car," he said. The convoy jolted to a halt. No one knew why, but he had seen something, someone. On the side of the road sat a woman, her back hunched, her clothes worn, a baby in her lap, and two children standing barefoot behind her. Her hand trembled as she wiped tears from her face. She wasn't protesting, she wasn't shouting. She was simply breaking, and someone noticed. That moment, unnoticed by most, would become the spark of a quiet revolution, a single act of compassion that would unravel lies, expose corruption, and remind a nation that leadership isn't measured by power, but by the people a leader chooses to stop for. And Ibrahy Trari stopped. He stepped out of the car slowly, his boots crunching on dry earth. He didn't bring a speech. He didn't wait for cameras. He walked straight toward her. The woman looked up, startled. She tried to wipe her tears quickly, but it was too late. He had already seen them. "My sister," Ibrahim said gently, lowering his voice. "What is your name?" She stood slowly, her arms tightening around her baby. "My name is Hawa, Mr. President." Her voice trembled, but she didn't flinch. "My husband was a soldier. He died last year in the north fighting the terrorists." Ibrahim's face hardened. He looked behind her, at the small, silent children standing barefoot in the dust. "And now you live like this?" She nodded, her lips pressed tight. "They told me I would get help. Money from the government, but nothing ever came. My children are hungry. I tried to farm, but there's no water, no seeds. I even sold my last goat to buy food." Ibrahim didn't speak. He just clenched his fists. A hero had died, and his family had been forgotten, but not anymore, because now someone was listening. That night, long after the village faded into darkness and the stars hung silently above the capital, President Ibrahy Trari sat alone in his office. He couldn't sleep. The image of Hawa, her trembling voice, her barefoot children, the grief, etched in her silence, played over and over in his mind. He stared at the ceiling, fists clenched, jaw tight. This wasn't just about one woman. This was about a promise the nation had made and broken. At 4 a.m., he called for an emergency meeting. When his advisors entered, still groggy, they found a president fully awake, eyes burning with purpose. "I want a full report," he said, sharply. "Every widow, every child of a fallen soldier. Names, villages, dates, payments, everything. And I want to know why this woman received nothing." The room fell silent. Ministers glanced at one another, nervous. No one had expected this, but by noon, a thick folder landed on his desk. Pages of names, records, receipts, proof of support allegedly delivered. And there, buried between the lines, was something that made Ibrahim go cold. According to the files, Hawa had already been paid, twice. He stared at the paper, then whispered, "She never saw a coin. And with that, justice began to wake. The investigation moved quickly. President Traoré wasn't about to let this disappear into bureaucracy. He assigned a special task force, loyal officers, trusted auditors, and told them one thing: find the truth, no matter where it leads. It didn't take long. Buried under false names and fake signatures, they found the culprit, a local official, the very man in charge of distributing widow funds in Hawa's region. He had forged documents. He had faked her signature. He had stolen every coin meant for Hawa and her children. And it wasn't just her. Dozens of widows, mothers of soldiers who had died defending their country, were also listed as paid. Not one of them had seen a single franc. Ibrahim's face darkened. His voice, once calm, now thundered. He betrayed the nation. He fed his greed with their pain. The next day, Ibrahim went on national television. He didn't wear a suit. He wore his military uniform, the same one he had worn in battle. "To the people of Burkina Faso," he said, "a widow of a hero came to me with tears. The money we promised her was stolen. Her pain broke my heart, and it broke my trust in those around me." Then he looked straight into the camera. The days of stealing from the poor are over. True to his word, Ibrahim Traoré returned to Hawa's village. But this time, he didn't come with speeches. He came with solutions. Trucks followed him, loaded with sacks of food, school supplies, clean clothing, and something even more precious, a small water tank for her dry, cracked farmland. His men unloaded everything carefully with quiet respect. No music, no fanfare, just action. Hawa stood silently, hand over her mouth, watching the president place a bag of rice by her doorstep. Her children clung to her dress wide-eyed. Then she wept, but this time they weren't tears of despair. "I thought we were invisible," she said. "No one ever came before." President Traoré shook his head gently. "No more," he said. "You are not forgotten. You are not alone." Later that day, engineers arrived. They began digging a deep well beside the village. Within hours, the sound of flowing water returned to a place once left dry by corruption. For Hawa and her neighbors, it was more than just water. It was justice, poured from the same hands that once held command in battle, now holding tools of restoration. A nation had promised to care for its heroes' families, and finally, that promise had found its way home. Weeks passed. The dry wind still blew, but something had shifted in Hawa's village. It began with a single morning, quiet, cool, and soft with promise. Hawa stood barefoot in damp soil, the first moisture the ground had tasted in months. Her children stood beside her, tiny hands clinging to seed baskets. Together they planted. Her body still carried the exhaustion of too many hungry nights, but her spirit was lighter. For once, her hands weren't digging for survival. They were sowing hope. That afternoon, without announcement or ceremony, Ibrahim returned. No military escort, no official motorcade. He wore simple clothes and walked on foot. He found Hawa in the field, her hands in the earth. "I see green," he said with a smile. "I see hope," she replied. He picked up a basket and joined her. The children ran around him laughing. No longer hungry, no longer afraid, just children, free to be children again. It wasn't only about farming. That month, a small school opened nearby. One room, one blackboard, one enormous dream. "I want my son to grow strong, like his father," Hawa said. "But not to die, to live, to protect." Ibrahim looked into the horizon. "And I want your daughter to lead." News of Hawa's story spread like fire. Widows from distant provinces began writing letters. Farmers came forward, speaking of broken promises, missing aid, and visits from officials who only talked, but never listened. But something was different. Now this time their voices didn't vanish into silence. President Traoré called his team together again. "We cannot let this be just one good deed. It has to be the beginning of a better system." And so it was. A new law was passed, direct support. For the families of fallen soldiers with zero middlemen, no forged signatures, no faceless bureaucracy, every coin, every benefit, every promise would be delivered directly and transparently. But Ibrahim didn't stop there. He created a new government office, one unlike any before, run by widows. Women who had lost husbands in the line of duty were now placed in charge of protecting others like them. Who better to guard the next Hawa, Ibrahim asked, than those who've walked in her shoes? At the official launch, Hawa was invited to speak. She stood at the podium, voice steady. "My husband died in silence," she said. "But today, I speak in his place. Thank you not just for helping me, but for listening." The crowd rose to their feet. Months passed. The seasons shifted. The land once dry and forgotten now whispered with life. Green fields moved with the wind like waves, and Hawa's small farm stood at the heart of it all, a quiet symbol of change. President Traore kept returning, not with speeches or cameras, just himself. One afternoon he sat outside Hawa's modest home, sipping tea beneath a tree. The sound of her children laughing echoed through the yard as they chased chickens, barefoot and free. "They look stronger now," he said. "They are," Hawa replied, handing him another cup. "Because you remembered us." Ibrahim nodded, eyes tired but warm. "I made a vow, not just to you, but to every family like yours." She looked at him for a moment, then asked softly, "Is it hard, carrying a country?" He paused, then smiled, a small, honest smile. "Some nights, I can't sleep. I see the faces of fallen soldiers. I read letters from mothers. I wonder, am I doing enough?" Hawa touched his hand. "You are, because you came. That's more than most ever did." Later, in his cabinet meeting, he raised a photo of Hawa and her children. "This woman," he said, "helped fix what we failed to see, and we owe her more than thanks. We owe her change." Sometimes history doesn't begin with a revolution. It begins when a leader stops for someone everyone else passed by. In that dusty village, Ibrahim Traore didn't just hear Hawa's story. He rewrote it. He didn't promise change. He delivered. Because real justice isn't about punishment. It's about planting something new in the place where pain once grew. A school, a well, a promise that this time, the system will not look away. So the next time you wonder if one voice matters, remember Hawa, remember her tears. Remember the children who now laugh, barefoot and free in fields that once knew only dust. And remember the man who stopped his convoy, not to be seen, but because he saw. If this story moved you, share it. Let others know that compassion still exists, that leadership can be human, that no one is too small to be remembered. Leave a comment. What would the world look like if every leader acted like Ibrahim Traore?